Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Global Accessibility Awareness Day. This is Jay Wyant. I am the Chief Information Accessibility Officer for the state of Minnesota. And it's my pleasure to welcome you here. First, the governor has recognized that today is Global Accessibility Awareness Day for the state of Minnesota and issued a proclamation attesting to that fact. We are very excited about this and very proud to be recognized by the state of Minnesota. Secondly, some quick housekeeping. First of all, we have a current link for the current transcriber. And please use that link. If you would prefer, for whatever reason, a AI automated generator caption, you should get that as well. Excuse me, you should get that as well. By using the keyboard key tool, Alt-Shift-C. Secondly, we have interpreter, ASL interpreter on site. They will be clicking back and forth and are available for you to spotlight as you wish. We would love your reaction. So please give thumbs up, hand clapping, explosion, whatever you like. We do not have chat available. We will only have moderated Q&A. And thanks, I'd love to see all the thumbs up and the clapping and the heart. Awesome. So what we ask you to do is, if you have a question, you can ask at any time. Go ahead and post your question. We will, for the most part, leave all the questions to the end. The reason being, they're going to have a conversation, and the conversation will flow. You may see a question that's a clarifying question, and we can bring that up as a clarifying question. But for the most part, we're going to have the talk, and then at the end, you will review your question, then ask questions as they are appropriate. We're going to post information about the questions in here now for your reference. I am proud to have you introduce our panelists. I'm so excited, I'm speaking over myself. So first of all, Jason Ewert is our GIS application analyst, working for Minnesota IT Services, partnered with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And our premier guest, our guest of honor, is Lijewski, who is a retired digital accessibility coordinator for the state of Minnesota and an audio description consultant. And they are today going to talk about maps and teaching them with a screen reader and what that is all about. So please take it away, Jason and Lolly.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jason Ewert. I'm a GIS web developer. My primary role is developer. I use he, him pronouns. I have white hair and a gray beard and dark rimmed glasses and a plaid shirt. And I'm rocking my MAPE lanyard. That's me. I'm really excited to be here. Lolly?
Hi, I'm Lijewski, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I appreciate being asked to do this with Jason. I was at DHS for over 18 years, and the last 4 of those I was the accessibility coordinator there. And so now I'm retired and I think I'll skip the self-description if that's okay with everyone. But I'm really pleased to be here.
Well, we're really happy to have you. So we're going to talk a little bit about how screen readers work, our experiences with maps, and what does it mean to make a map accessible. And then a big part of our presentation today, or our conversation today, will be using a map with a screen reader. It's a real application with real complexity. And actually it was updated on Monday, so that was really fun. So we'll get into that, and then I'm sure that conversation will flow afterwards as well. Let's start. So my experience with screen readers is primarily through testing. I use NVDA, and I found it tremendously enlightening to just listen to the things we were writing for the web, the content we're writing, the alt text, the sections of the website, so the navigation, lists, and it really changed the way I write for the web, and it changes the order I put things in. Hopefully I'm more successful today than I was before I started diving into using screen readers. Lolly, what's your experience with screen readers?
So my experience with screen readers goes way back. I started using a screen reader in 1976. They were pretty primitive back then, but have made loads of progress since then. And so my current screen reader, the one that I use the most, is JAWS, Job Access with Speech. And it's a pretty robust screen reader. So screen readers are a piece of software, for those who don't know, that translates text to speech so that I'm able, as a blind person, to hear what's on my screen mostly. And that has enabled me to do, all kinds of things, to be able to be competitively employed and to do all kinds of things. So I have experience in using other screen readers as well. I have some experience with NVDA. I also have Apple devices and Apple device, and so I use VoiceOver on that. Each screen reader has a little bit of a different approach to presenting information. And one of the things about JAWS is that it doesn't always give you orientation to your page. So if someone says, you look at the left nav bar, what that doesn't necessarily mean anything, because the presentation of the information becomes displayed as text more in a line, more in a than otherwise. So that's really a thing about how screen readers present text, and it can cause some challenges when you're trying to orient to a screen, and especially to maps.
Do screen readers provide any orientation information, or is it pretty strictly a linear a flow of information?
So in the case of this one, and some do. For example, VoiceOver is quite good at providing information on the screen as to where you're at, what your location is, what your orientation is on the screen. It was kind of a unique experience when I started using that one, because it gave me that orientation I did not have using JAWS for many years before. But JAWS doesn't do that quite as much, but you kind of learn as you go, and talking with sighted folks, what might be located where. And so you can create a visual picture in your mind a little bit of the page sometimes.
Yes, top, bottom, middle,
Right.
especially when the focus jumps, as we will see. At the state of Minnesota, in the Software Center, if you're a state employee, you probably have access to NVDA. I highly recommend trying that out and learning a couple commands. We do also have JAWS. I'm not entirely sure about how that's distributed. I just recently got access to JAWS, so I'm looking forward to jumping into it. And like you said, the screen readers they make their own decisions. They present things slightly differently, or more importantly, maybe not in a way that you're expecting, which will be a key theme here, presenting information in an order that you're expecting, something that makes sense. So my primary, and I don't want to pretend to be an expert on accessibility on the web, but I'm an enthusiast. My experience with maps is as a developer writing JavaScript, as a cartographer creating maps, among other things. But Lolly, you have some experience with maps, and a lot of the experience of maps is also largely hidden from you. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So my experience with maps is somewhat limited. And in terms of maps digitally on the online, that's one area. I was first exposed to maps tactily in person. So there were actual diagrams of maps, which to me were very confusing. I find a two-dimensional map, tactile map, often, not always, but often difficult to follow. Depends on how well it's done, depends on how much they're trying to represent in the map, all of that. As far as online maps go, I would say, have been a skeptic about making maps accessible online for many years. And when someone would say to me, I have this map and it's accessible, I might say, oh, really? I'll take a look at it and see and give it a try. But honestly, there has been so little done that maps are sort of a hidden thing. And the other thing is that when you don't have the context, you don't have the concept of what a map is. I think I remember the first time I actually saw a map visually depicted, and that was when I was able to read some large print and then was able to see where south, north, east, and west were on the map. It was a large print map. I couldn't make much out of the map, but I could at least get the compass direction. Online, it just has been a sort of enigma. And so when I was contacted and asked to do this, I was really excited to find that Jason was interested in pursuing this and interested in trying to make maps more accessible. And so I thought, yeah, this would be fun to try.
Awesome. I am very much interested in that. And if you are also interested in that, I highly recommend jumping in and digging into the topic because it is fascinating and it makes you think about maps in new ways, which I love. So WCAG 2.1 on their criteria 1.1.1, they're talking about non-text content. And the terms they use in the requirement is to serve the equivalent purpose, which begs the question, what is the equivalent purpose of a web map? It can be many things. There's some work underway right now. Brandon Biggs is, I think, leading to create a map equivalent purpose framework. He was kind enough to reach out to me. He's also presenting right now. So I'm looking forward to seeing his presentation as well. But what accessibility's, premise is that we need to make things perceivable. We need to make them operable, understandable, and robust. And we've already talked about the different kinds of screen readers treat the content a little bit differently. And that's just one aspect of accessibility. So for Brandon's map equivalent purpose framework, he talks about 3 different areas. And one is communicating landmark information. So that's name and type and shape. He talks about communicating route information. So distance, direction, and length. And then also survey information, topological relationships. So what is next to what? The distance and direction between objects on the map. And in reading that, it really opens my understanding of what kinds of things a map is trying to communicate. Is there more in the north and less in the south? Am I near this other thing? Is there a cluster of things happening in one area and not in the other? And like I said, I love this because the more you think about it, the more you think of how you can write and communicate with your maps. So with that, we have a task set up for Lolly, and we're going to demonstrate that. We're going to have the screen reader on, and you'll be hearing that through Lolly's computer. The Pollution Control Agency has a new application for cumulative impacts. It contains 26 topics that we had to organize. These are environmental stressors that might affect communities in the state of Minnesota. It's organized into, 3, 6, 8 different categories. And within those, there's 26 topics, an overview of each, and then there's a map. And you can find yourself on the map and learn more about these environmental stressors in whatever location you happen to be focused on. So Lolly, do you want to try sharing? And I'll set up the task here.
Yep.
So, and if you hear pause, Jason, if you hear pauses in the conversation, it may be that Lolly is listening to her screen reader before the content of the screen reader is shared.
Trying to locate the share button.
It is. Control-Shift-E will bring up the
There it is.
share.
I got it here.
Okay, great. And then there will be a toggle for sharing your audio as well.
Got it. Okay. Can you see the
All right.
screen?
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Lolly. We can hear your screen reader and you're sharing your desktop.
Okay.
So we see your browser, then your email is also open. You're welcome to maximize your browser or not. I think our demonstration will go great either way.
I'm going to go into that. I'm going to leave this Teams window and go into the browser.
Okay.
Task switching. Navigating maps with a screen reader : conversation vertical bar Microsoft Teams. 2 of 8. To move to an item, press. Open audio options button collapsed.
Okay.
Mute mic button. Open audio options button. Mute mic button.
Or try to.
Task switching. Map of cumulative impacts for permit applications - Google Chrome. To move to an item. Map of cumulative impact. Minnesota pollution.
There we go. Now let's see.
Alt context menu. System. To map move. M. Size. Minimize. And maximize. X. Leaving menus. Map of cumulative impacts for permit.
How is that?
That's looking great. We see your browser maximized, and we got a little preview about how you're navigating around and what you're hearing on your end. Now, what you hear is probably a lot faster than what we're used to listening to.
I'm going to slow it down. So.
And if it comes by real quick, I may interject and just talk about what we heard, because there will be some instances where sections will announce what type of content they are.
So give me 1 second, Jason, and I'm going to slow the speech rate down here.
Slower.
Okay. There you go.
Okay, so we gave Lolly a hypothetical situation or a practical situation. And this is a new application that the PCA has launched. And in this situation, Lolly got an email describing cumulative impacts and cumulative environmental impacts, this new web application that the PCA has just published. And we're going to use Duluth. So as a resident of Duluth, I want to learn about environmental stressors in my neighborhood. And we're going to browse the application, see what this thing is and what it does. It'll be an adventure, as it usually is. And we'll talk about what we're hearing along the way.
So usually I would start out looking around the screen in a couple of different ways. I might start using the headings with letter H, first letter H, navigation, or using arrows, or potentially using tab. And all three of those controls may bring you to different things. So I'm going to start with using headings here.
Cumulative impacts mapping and analysis platform left paren draft 2026 right paren heading level 1.
So that's the title.
Cumulative impacts mapping and analysis platform left paren draft 2026 right paren heading. Select a stressor heading level 2.
So the next heading I hear is select a stressor.
Map options heading level 2.
And then map options.
Stressor overview heading level 2.
And stressor overview.
Cumulative impact stressor summary heading level 3.
Cumulative impact stressor summary.
Map legend heading level 3.
And map legend.
Wrapping to top. Cumulative impact
to the top. So that gave me kind of a preview of this, what's on the screen, but there's a lot of information in between there that it skipped. So in between those headings, then what I would do, and I will try this now, is
Cumulative impacts mapping and analysis platform left parent draft 2020.
go down, down arrow.
Link Abraham Agaya on Espinal DS Stacidio web. Link for Hagahasumalaga E. Link Hid font of Kia
Okay, so
UAS.
that's the language block. So I'm going to go
Map
back
of cumulative
up to the top.
Cumulative impacts mapping and analysis platform left parent draft 2020. Select a stressor heading level
And
2.
back to the stressor heading. And look at what's under there by arrowing down.
Cumulative impacts mapping and analysis platform main navigation region.
So that tells me that there's a region with information in it.
Cumulative impacts summary button current page.
So the cumulative impact summary, cumulative impact summary.
Open navigation options for air pollution. Button collapsed. Open navigation options for land pollution. Button collapsed. Open navigation options for water pollution. Open navigation options for traffic factors. Button. Open navigation options for social factors. Button collapsed. Open navigation options for public health factors. Open navigation options for neighborhood factors. Button collapsed. Cumulative impacts mapping and analysis platform main navigation region end.
So that tells me I'm at the end of the region, and I've gone through the options that I can choose here. I'm going to go back and choose the social.
Open navigation options for social factors. Button collapsed. Enter. Expanded.
Hitting
Map of
enter.
cumulative impacts for permit applications. Main region. Cumulative impacts mapping and analysis Open navigation options for social factors. Button expanded.
So I've opened that section in that region, which describes the social factors, and I'm going to try to read what's in that region.
List of 6 items. Open the age of resident stressor overview. Button. Open the cost-burdened household stressor overview. Button. Open the income inequality stressor overview. Button. Open the lack of educational attainment stressor overview. Button. Open the people with disabilities stressor overview. Button. Open the unemployment stressor overview. Button. List end.
And that tells me I'm at the end of the list. So I can choose any one of these and go further here.
Open the unemployment Open the people with disabilities stressor overview.
I'm going
Button.
to choose people with disabilities and press enter.
Enter. Group. Overview tab selected. 1 of 3.
So then I'm in that group and I hear overview.
Search results tab 2 of 3.
Search results.
Buffer tool tab 3 of 3.
And buffer. And I want to look at the search results.
Search results tab 2 of 3.
So I'm going to tab this time.
Overview tab selected. 1 of 3.
And I'm now.
Overview tab panel. Heading level 2 stressor overview. Heading level 3 people with disabilities. The percent of people with a disability.
In that section where that data is.
Studies have found that people with disabilities in the U.S. frequently live near environmentally hazardous sites, such as Superfund or remediation sites, solid waste facilities, and high-traffic roadways. People with disabilities also have less capacity to respond to emergency events like floods or wildfires. Additionally, people with disabilities are more likely to have chronic health conditions than people without disabilities. Data dates: 2019-2023 left paren 5-year estimate right paren.
Okay, so that gives me more information about what's in this section, and I just want to say that this kind of information I've never had access to before, so this was really a fun experience to explore the first time that Jason and I went through this and to really see what he's done with this. So Jason, do you want to would you have another direction you want me to go here?
Yes, so the organization of this content, you're mostly able to step through in order. So the first important thing with the design was to create the navigation where you expect navigation to be. You notice that the list of navigation options announced like the count. So it's actually a list of buttons.
Mm-hmm.
So you know it's not 100 and you know it's not 2. And then it comes into the content and displays the overview of each topic. And the intention was to design that as close to a standard layout web page as possible. It's actually going left to right instead of top to bottom. But as Lolly scrolls through it, it's a linear pile of information that you experience. The very next step is there's a legend for the map, and then the map application itself will come next. Let's do the Duluth search. So if we keep going down, we'll go into the legend and you'll see some issues with that, and I can comment quickly on that too.
Okay.
More information on background, data sources, and link CI-map heading level 3 map legend. Percent of people with a disability. Greater 18.4-48 unlabeled graphic. Greater 18.4-48.
You hear that's being repeated twice.
Yes, and so that's being repeated twice, and this is one of the things that the screen reader is doing. It also said unlabeled graphic, and I couldn't figure out why it would say that for a very long time. And it's decided that because there's no text in the label, it's 2 numbers with a greater than, it's not enough information. So it's describing it as an unlabeled graphic. An appropriate label would be highest bucket, describing the graphic on the legend as you would see it, and then announcing the category of, or the title of that layer. In this case, this category is 18 to 48%. So I thought that was really interesting.
Greater 12.8-18.4 unlabeled graphic. Greater 12.8-18.4. Greater 8.7-12.8
I'm just arrowing down again, so this is, to me, being presented linearly.
Greater 8.7-12.8. Greater 0-8.7 unlabeled graphic. Greater 0-8.7. Data not available graphic. Data not available. CAD panel end.
Okay.
So now we're at the
Visit
end.
same page.
And the thing that comes next is the map itself. In NVDA, it announces itself as I arrow down. It says application. If you arrow back up and arrow down again.
CAD panel end. Visited same page link. Skip to maps text search.
Okay, we got the skip link.
Do you want me to use
have to
that?
respond to one comment really quick.
Okay.
Let's see, it's in the chat. I want to make sure everyone's hearing. We're going to leave that up because I think it's an important topic. So I'll be right back to that. Okay, sorry. You have my attention again. I'm back. I just wanted to make sure everything was going well.
Okay, so
Web map canvas graphic. 100 miles. Home button. Zoom in button. Zoom out button. Find my location button.
so if I want to choose a location, this is where I would do that.
Yep. So now you've entered the map. The area is an application, and what happens with screen readers is they kind of operate in 2 modes. One is a reading mode, and one is a focus mode. In a focus mode, it lets you type into input. So like we're going to say Duluth, but the D is a hotkey in NVDA. There are a lot of hotkeys in these applications. So Lolly would go back and forth, or entering into an input box would give you an audible click, knowing that the screen reader changed modes from reading to a focus mode or an input mode.
Right.
Open the map legend toggle button. Find my location button. Enter. Find my location button. To activate, press enter.
So I'm going to type in Duluth.
Duluth. Open the map legend toggle button. To toggle the state, press spacebar.
Whoops.
Find my location button. Find my location button.
Let's try again.
Enter. Cancel. PCA-02.pca.state.mn.us wants to know your location dialog. PCA-GIS. PCA-GIS0.
Okay.
Close
so
button to activate.
There you go.
I'm going to
Enter. This site has to find my location button. Enter. Cancel. PCA-GIS02. Never allow button. To act. Close. Allow while visiting the site button. To close button. Enter. Map of queue.
Yep, and you can
Find
close.
my location.
So
Sorry.
we are on a button that I titled Find My Location. And I think this is a good example of when we step into these custom JavaScript applications, there's not a precedent for what the thing is doing. We can write kind of whatever we want. There are some standards around map navigation as far as hotkeys go. So at the moment you are on a tool. You've passed the map focus center into the tools. If you shift tab back up to the
Zoom out button.
skip to
Zoom in button. To activate.
search.
Default map view. Home button. To activate, press enter.
There'll be 2 more.
A map of Minnesota displaying the distribution of cumulative environmental impact stressor. Skip to Maps text search link. To activate, press Enter.
And then you can enter that.
Enter. Map of cumulative impacts for permit applications. Document.
So that's probably
Map
a
of
good
cumulative
example of using too many, trying to do too much, or compensate for the design by adding that skip link in there. You know, the search maybe should have been in the logical order.
Map of cumulative impact.
And from a user perspective, what happens then is you're trying to figure out, okay, I did enter this in a search field, and you are wondering how, if you tab and you tab out of it, that field, are you going to be able to get to that, the information that you requested?
Mhm.
And so that's kind of, and that happens. There are definitely times when you're in a form where you're filling something out, or where you're entering something in a field, and you tab out of that field and you don't immediately get the information you're looking for. So sometimes you end up having to look around a bit.
From here, if you hit tab, you should activate the search.
Map of cumulative impacts for permit applications. Banner region. Application search tool. Use down arrow for search suggestions. Search in button. To activate, press Enter. Enter. Search in menu. Search in group. All checked.
Okay.
All checked. 1 of 4.
So
Find Minnesota census tract. 2 of 4. Find Minnesota address or place. 3 of 4. Find Minnesota city or township. 4 of 4.
so these are my options here in this area.
Yep.
Find
If you
Minnesota
choose
address or place.
all will be the first one.
Find all checked. 1 of 4. Enter. Leaving menus. Search in button. To activate, press Enter.
And then you can tab one more time.
Search region. Find address or census tract. Map search text input. Edit combo. Blank. Placeholder. Find address or census tract. To set the value, use the arrow keys or type the value. Blank. Map search text input. Map search text input. Search in button. To activate, press Enter.
Tab forward one more. Can you
Search
enter
region.
Duluth?
Find address or census tract. Maps.
Okay. And then what did you want me to do?
Enter Duluth.
Oh, okay.
Excellent. And then before you
Okay.
hit enter,
Mhm.
so this, what we're experiencing might be some overcomplication of what we need, where you're able to choose different things to search from. That's not necessarily needed there, but it's also not configurable from the Esri JavaScript tool that is powering this search. So something to work on. You should be able to hit enter or space from here, and it will run your search.
Duluth. Enter. Main region. Search results tab panel. Duluth, Hermantown, Lake Superior, St. Louis County. The map is set to a township scale. It contains air quality permits for Duluth Energy Systems, Wisconsin Central Limited-Duluth ORDOC, Sofitel America-Duluth, Western Lake Superior Sanitary District, the Sea Rice Coal Co-Duluth doc, Minnesota Power Incorporated-Hibbard Renee. Zoom in for additional permits.
So we've had 2 things happening. It focuses change to the search results. And if you use the H keys, you should be able to preview those search results. But the map also described itself to you as an alert.
Mhm. So I'll just hit H so that we can hear what.
Search results heading level 2. Census tract summary heading level 3. Wrapping to top. Cumulative impacts mapping and cumulative impacts mapping and select a stressor head map options heading level 2. Search results heading level 2. Census tract summary heading level 3.
Okay, so it took me to the end of the search results and then it popped me back up to the top is what happened from my perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those are all the headings present on the page.
Mm-hmm.
If you hit down, it'll describe your search result.
This tract is an environmental justice area. The combined stressor total is 20 out of 26 environmental stressors. The state median is 13. The county median is 12. The selected environmental stressor is people with disabilities. In this tract, the percent of people with a disability is 26.1. The value for this census tract is higher than the state median of 11.4 and higher than the county median of 15.3. Complete environmental justice and stressor information for this tract is available in the link census tract stressor summary left for an opens PDF right paren.
So that's just an indication that there's a document that has further information about this section in it.
This tract contains the following : cities : Duluth, tribal nations : none. This tract's population is : 2,967. Air quality permits : link Western Lake Superior Sanitary District. For more information about environmental justice, please visit the link MPCA's website. GAAD panel end.
And I was arrowing down to get through that list.
So this is similar to a docked panel. A common workflow with maps is we present some data, the user can click on that, and then this floating modal of content appears. So this is an attempt to put that loading search results into a reading order on the page. So you are in front of the map. What comes next is the map, and if you tab into that, we'll demo some of the things that the map attempts to do as far as
Skip
describing
to maps
itself.
text search link.
And you can tab one more.
A map of Minnesota displaying the distribution of cumulative environmental impact stressors. Use arrows to center the map on a tract. Press the I key to view a tract's cumulative impacts. Press the plus key to zoom in. Press the minus key to zoom out. Press Shift I to turn off keyboard access.
So those are keyboard cues to know how to navigate within this area.
And if you up, down, left, right, we'll get some more information.
You are panning south, Duluth, Hermantown, Lake Superior, St. Louis County. The map is set to a township scale. It contains air quality permits for Duluth Energy Systems, Wisconsin Central Limited-Duluth ORDOC, Sofitel America-Duluth, Western Lake Superior Sanitary District, the Sea Rice Coal Co-Duluth DOC, Minnesota Power Incorporated-Hibbard Renee. Zoom in for additional permits.
So there are lots of things to consider here, but the map itself has a ton of data, and it's easy enough to query that data and present it. Some of the challenges I think are, what do you write with that data? What sentences do you string together that would be useful? At what point, if you were at a statewide level and querying all air quality permits, that list would cover your whole screen and not be very useful. So at what point do you stop presenting the results? But there's data there for us to use. This is acting like an alert. So it's an ARIA live region. It'll announce itself as it changes. So the panning up, down, left, right announces itself. And then there's one more custom accessibility tool that we created. And this is really to fix a glaring hole in accessibility with maps, is that we hide so much information in the map and we hide it behind a mouse click. And if you're not a mouse user, how do you click on that thing to learn more about it? So up, down, left, right is going to move the map around. And then the I key we used to do a query of the center of the map. And Lolly, right now your map is in focus. You can always check that by going up, down, left, right.
Right.
You are panning west, Duluth, Hermantown, Lake Superior, St. Louis County. The map is set to a township scale. It contains air quality permits for Duluth Energy Systems, Wisconsin Central Limited-Duluth ORDOC, Sofitel America-Duluth, Western Lake Superior Sanitary District, the Sea Rice Coal Co-Duluth DOC, Minnesota Power Incorporated-Hibbard Renee. Zoom in for additional permits. You are panning east, Duluth, Hermantown, Lake Superior, St. Louis County. The map is set to a You are panning north, Duluth, Hermantown, Lake Superior, St. Louis County. So
that's a really nice way to get your directionality straight as you're looking at the map.
And this is one of those things as cartographers, we like to say, well, the north isn't always up. In this case, having north up as a standard starting place, at least, because you could spin the map and that would be disorienting for everyone, is important. Up, down, left, right. Those are the same hotkeys that Google Maps uses. They are the out-of-the-box hotkeys that ESRI Maps uses, as well as the plus and minus for zooming in. So the plus or the minus and equals key, I guess, would be right next to the backspace, would zoom in and zoom out. We added the I key, and I think we're going to standardize that more on the enter and space key. But at the moment, I, for information, will run a query. And if you want to hit I real quick.
Sure.
Search results tab panel. 1. Use arrows to center the map on a tract. 2. Press the I key to view a tract's cumulative impacts.
Okay, let me try again.
3. Press the plus key to zoom in.
Oh,
I
it
thought
popped
zoom-
out.
Yep.
Keyboard access to map features. Query button. Use the I key to query. Search results tab.
Okay.
I. Heading level 2 search results. Your search for 46.761 latitude, minus 92.115 longitude returned : Census tract 27137015600 in St. Louis County.
So that what happened was when I went into the, I'm going to try this again.
Group.
Mhm.
Overview tab selected. Overview tab selected. Search results tab panel.
So that's what, when I press I, that's what it's bringing me to.
And then if you go through the H keys,
Okay.
you have
Search results heading level 2.
Sure.
Census tract summary heading level 3. Wrapping to top. Cumulative impacts mapping and analysis platform left and draft 2026 right and heading level. Cumulative impacts mapping and analysis platform left. Select a stressor heading level 2. Map options heading level 2. Search results heading level 2. Census tract summary heading level 3. Wrapping to top. Cumulative impacts mapping and cumulative. Select a stressor heading level. Map options heading level 2. Search results heading level. Census tract summary heading.
Okay, so I'm back in the search results. So what I did was kind of take a trip around those, through those, and then back up to the top and then back down into that area by just using the first letter heading. So H for heading navigation.
Cool. I think as far as the demo, maybe that's where we end for now. There are a handful of things that, like, as designers, we're trying to design for and create tools for, and I think we're really in like the testing ideas and seeing what's most useful. Our attempt here is kind of do a search first, because if I wanted to learn about my neighborhood, I could come here and search it and peruse the topics of this site, whatever that happens to be. And we kind of put the map towards the bottom as it's a graphic that would aid in search results. Obviously, using that I key to run a search is a kind of an accessibility attempt at keyboard nav, although, obviously sighted users would take advantage of that much more readily. How was the map itself? Did it feel like a big weird search result, or was there some
No.
spatial context that it gave you?
Yeah, there was some. I think once you get into the results, it's not clear about, orientation and all that. But yeah, I mean, being in the map and being able to get the cardinal directions off the map, northwest, north, south, east, west, was really helpful in terms of being able to kind of orient myself in my mind visually as to where I'm at.
It did describe itself a little bit with Brandon's example of what does a map communicate. Let's bring that back up so I quote it correctly. Learning about what's near me. We're in Duluth. I believe it's at Hermantown. But we all have different kind of landmarks that maybe we know the townships, maybe we know stores, parks, points of interest could be used for this kind of thing, describing the spatial relationship about what's being displayed on the map. If it's an area you're familiar with, having the names of parks and stores and library, what have you, I feel like would be tremendously helpful. We attempt to describe the scale of the map in terms of, is it a building scale or a city scale or a county scale? Because you could have a map of the world, you can have a map of your neighborhood, and how do we communicate that?
I will just say that I tried that feature and it was fun to be able to kind of narrow it down and then zoom it back out again.
Yeah, it's not like doing a simplified version of this with like maybe lakes and lake names. You know, we're in
Mhm.
Minnesota, we love lakes. Where are these lakes, and are they near me? Are they in my county? Are they in my city? Are they in this city?
Mhm.
Um, I I think that would be fun for me. Hopefully, it'd be fun for users
Yeah.
to explore.
Mhm.
Um,
It would actually. There's so many lakes you don't even know about, with more than 10,000.
exactly. I look at lakes all the time. I work with the Pollution Control Agency, and we work on a lot of water data, and I still find new lakes that are near me that I didn't know about. Um, so Lolly, has this changed your experience with maps at all? Are you more interested or curious of exploring different kinds of maps?
Sure. I mean, when the opportunity presents itself, I think if I understand that, I might be able to explore something like this, I would be interested in doing that and getting more, information and just kind of learning about what kinds of information can be presented in a map also um, is, I think, broadening my scope of thinking about what maps are.
Cool. Well, there's some really, really neat things like Brandon and company are doing. Um, we kind of have our visual cartography, but they are working on audio cartography, where you can explore the maps and you move from polygon to polygon. The audio changes from street to grass to building, that kind of thing. There's some really neat campus maps built using that platform. Um, there's just so much to explore, and I really encourage people to, get at least NVDA and try it out. Try it with your websites, and think about what maps might communicate. I know I said we'll aim for 140, 145 for questions, but we do have 10 minutes left for questions here.
Can I just add one thing, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
That is when you're thinking about making something accessible, remember that it isn't accessible to the technology. It's accessible to WCAG. So whether it's NVDA or JAWS or Narrator, it should work the same essentially. There are going to be differences between screen readers. That is true. The way that they present information. However, just keep in mind that you're creating a situation under which a screen reader, that technology piece of software, can come in and take what you've created and then convey that to the user. So it's always best to test with more than one screen reader.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And so much of it comes down to organization of your content, the tagging, using the proper tags so that it knows it's a navigation section. It knows it's a button. I find that sometimes like you hit a button and there's no audio confirmation that something was submitted. There's a lot to it, and it's great. A lot of low-hanging fruit to write something you'd want to hear for an alt description, set the tone. Lally, you were showing me the Hubble telescope soundscapes, and I just thought the sound was fascinating as the picture.
Right. So that's what that is there is a group out west that's done a lot with what are called sonification. So they put sound to visual depictions. And so they used that to help with some of the information that's coming from the Hubble. They also used it recently. Someone used it to create a tracker, which had a lot of information on it, and it was very fun for the Artemis flight.
Yeah, and it scans left to right, top to bottom, and kind of gives you a representation of density. And then it also uses sound with luminosity and things. And I thought immediately of like a heat map where like maybe the concentration's in the south and you scan north, top to bottom or left to right, and you get kind of a spatial representation of that image as a of the density of the sound or the volume from left to right. Just endless possibilities for neat things.
Should we look at some questions?
Yeah.
Mr. J, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. We have a lot of questions. I don't know, we're going to get to all of the questions today. So the first question I'm going to ask is a question that came up in the chat quite a bit. And the observation that there is a flash screen or pop-up screen on top of whatever Lolly is doing. And so the entire time that Lolly was navigating the map, no one could see what Lolly was navigating. So we have two questions about that. One is there, does that give us any guidance about what we should do about splash screens in the first place? Or does it matter? And secondly, is there a way that Lolly or a reason for Lolly to dismiss that splash screen for any reason?
So what I can say about this, and maybe Jason has more of an answer, is that in the case of JAWS, and I don't know about NVDA, I haven't used it enough. There are ways. We kind of did this because we wanted you to see what it was like from a user perspective and really not have the ability to track. But what you can do, there is a way that you can turn on a cursor that tracks what the screen reader is doing. And so there's a way to sort of see where it's going. But this was the original experience.
That's right. We did see your focus ring move around, although it was under the splash screen. I don't know
about removing that. I'm not sure about that.
And it did focus, and you navigated through it. It's just part of the content.
Mm-hmm.
I believe banner ads can, present problems of just inserting themselves in places where you wouldn't expect them to be.
Yes.
And maybe the splash screen mattered more for the people who are watching than the people who are listening. So I don't know if that's good or bad.
Well, this is Jay. I can imagine someone who is low vision, who uses the screen reader. So they want to see what's there, but they also need a way to dismiss the screen so they can actually use the vision along with the screen reader.
That's really true, Jay. And I think from my perspective, that's the first time I heard there was a splash screen up there.
All right, but we have lots more questions. So we'll leave off the screen for now. And the next question is, Jason talked a lot about scripting. And so people are wondering, is this a custom script or is this a off-the-shelf tool that Jason is customizing? And if the latter, then does that mean that to make maps accessible, even with off-the-shelf equipment, do you have to do extra work?
The answer is yes. It's both widgets and modules in the ESRI's map library. So the search and the legend were their design. And I just used them and I said, insert a legend here. The map descriptions was custom code. The keyboard navigation was part of the map library, but the I key to do a query was also custom code. The layout is not out of the box. That's a custom website that we made. So all of the buttons and the navigation sections, that's stuff we wrote. There are libraries and frameworks that take care of a lot of the details for you. So that's an approach. But adding accessibility and removing barriers to accessibility is often custom JavaScript in my case.
Thank you. Next question is, Jason mentioned Brandon Biggs. And so I just want to briefly note that Brandon Biggs is the co-founder of Audiom, AUDIOM, which designs maps, as Jason said, for wayfinding and similar directional information. He presented today via the Great Lakes ADA webinar series. It's a fantastic free series that you can get live and recorded. And I will post that information in the Q&A, so you can click on those links for that more information.
Thank you, Jay. I'll be clicking on that. I want to see his presentation.
No problem. And then the third question is for Lolly. People were asking, do blind people all have the audio go that fast?
Okay. Let me just say that was slow.
Thank you.
And yes, most do. Those folks especially who've been using screen readers for a long time, have gotten to the point where they have an ability to listen. I have a bird clock in the background, is what you're hearing. We'll be done in a minute. They have an ability to listen that they've developed over years, as I do, at a faster speed. There are times absolutely when I slow it down when there's something that I want to retain. But if I'm just speeding through information, I can often listen at quite a Jay can tell quite a rapid, and Jason, rapid speed. So yes.
Wow, thank you for that. And so the next question was about okay, that's a repeat question. Okay, so have you considered providing a search option that does not rely on a map interface? You need to use the map-centric interface to relay this information.
That's a question I ask myself as well. Am I designing the map out of the need for the map out? This was an approach. The navigation maps that Audiom creates put the map front and center and make it perceivable and operable and understandable. So there are different maps for different needs. I haven't seen any out of the box solutions. I feel like we are in new territory with new ideas and trying not to deviate from standards and what might be expected on a website too far. So a little bit of that work is reining in, these floating modals of information or time sliders and things like that we can add and putting that content in an order that makes sense. I don't know if I answered that question. I think I did.
Yes, it does. I mean, we have to realize that maps do serve a visual purpose for people who are visual. There are people who are visual, just like the people who are audio, and there are people who are both. And so you want to try to reach a very broad audience.
And I will add, too, that we all have spatial perception. We all understand the context of the space that we live in, and we want to learn more about that space. So these are tools to make that easier.
Thank you. Okay, then people have been asking, is this recorded? And yes, it is. We're going to post a recording on our blog page within the next couple of weeks. Please subscribe to our newsletter for more updates. And we are out of time, so I'll also note that we're going to post them in the chat more information about the state of Minnesota accessible map. And as well as how to subscribe to our newsletter. I really want to thank Jason and Lolly for taking the time to do this. I'm so grateful that you shared your expertise and your experience with us today. And I think the audience had a great time too. We had a lot of people here. They really seemed to enjoy. There's a lot of engagement in the Q&A. And I wish we could answer all the questions, but we will look at the questions. And when we repost this in recording, you may want to answer some additional questions in the post as well to try to address what people are thinking. And I don't know if you see or hear this, but you're getting applause and heart emojis by the gazillions right now. So again, thank you everyone. Have a great rest of the day for Global Accessibility Awareness Day. And see you all.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks,
Thank
Lally.
you. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jay. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, everyone.